Welcome to the Fitness Industry Success Show. Ideas, inspiration, and interviews to take your fitness business to the next level. With over 23 years of fitness industry experience and the founder of LEADLION, an innovative fitness marketing agency, here's your host, Nick Parker.
Welcome everybody to another episode of the Fitness Industry Success Show. Listen, I am so excited that you tuned in today because we have, I know I say an amazing guest, but I'm going to double down on that. And we have one of the most amazing guests on our show today. His name is Matthew Januszek, and he is the co-founder of Escape Fitness, and also the host of one of the best fitness podcasts out there in the market today, called the Escape Your Limits podcast. And I'm telling you right now, if you are not listening to the Escape Your Limits podcast, you are really missing out on some high-level interviews, some of the best people. He actually does this in person, and it's incredibly intimate. You really will not go wrong listening to a lot of his episodes, and you'll get so much value from that. So without further ado, I want to welcome Matthew. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
And thanks so much for inviting me on, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited. So what I want to do is I want to dive into your journey today. I want people to understand a little bit more about who Escape Fitness is, but more than just the company and more than just the Escape Your Limits podcast. I want to talk about the journey, the rise up. And also, you are so full of knowledge and wisdom because you have interviewed the best of the best. You've been around brilliant minds, and you yourself have had success in the industry. And so there's going to be a lot of life lessons and stuff to glean from this along the way. So I want to pull as much as we can out of that. But before we dive in, are you up for playing a little game real quick so people can get to know you?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, good. All right, so we're going to play a game. It's called Two Truths and One Lie. What you're going to do is you're going to give us two things that are true about you, one that's a lie, in no particular order. So it makes it difficult for me and our audience to guess. And I'm going to see if I can guess which one is the lie.
Okay, two truths and one lie, yeah? Okay, all right. Okay, so... the first one is I was a topless dancer in a nightclub. Okay, that's the first one.
Okay.
The second one was that I was a Latin ballroom and a Latin dancer. And then the third one was that I learned to fly a helicopter when I was 16.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to say, I think you would have learned to fly a helicopter at 16. I can believe that maybe. A Latin ballroom dancer, I don't know about that, but I've seen your workout videos, and I can believe you are a topless dancer at some bar somewhere, serving shots and doing stuff off your chest, maybe with, I don't know if there was whipped cream involved or what, but so I'm going to guess that you are not a Latin ballroom dancer.
Okay. All right. Well, you're incorrect. I was the topless dancer in a nightclub, and I was the Latin ballroom dancer. So there you go.
No way. No way. I can't believe it. I'm sure there's some stories there.
and I was thinking, I kind of put three, which are all true. And I thought, okay, I need to think of one which was false. So I had a list of things, and I thought, no, they can't all be true. So I guess I've sort of got another life before I was involved in the fitness industry about things that I probably shouldn't talk too much about.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, we may have to save that story for after the show. I think I want to hear this one. So, well, good. Well, listen, I want to dive in. But before we get into your journey, can you just tell, for those that may not be, people that may not be familiar with your company, the Escape Fitness and the show, can you tell us a little bit about each so they have an idea of what each is, and then we'll dive in?
Yeah, I'll start with the podcast. We have a podcast that was started based out of a lot of the people that I used to meet. I've been in the industry for about 22 years. We've got a company called Escape Fitness, and I used to get to travel around, meeting a lot of people around the world, at times when you could travel around and fly relatively easily. And I would meet owners and business people and investors and distributors, and we'd have some great conversations and learn a lot about what was going on in different markets. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if I could share some of that, even just with the people within my own organization, because there's some great lessons and ideas that we can use to direct our business and also help a lot of the people we work with. So that was really how that started. And it went on to become something that we recorded, and it became, you know, sort of almost 5 years later, it became the Escape Your Limits podcast. But that was really it's a bit of a side project. It was something that I probably have about 5% of my time that I do, although people think I spent a lot more time on it than that. But my main job is I'm the co-founder of Escape Fitness, and we basically design some of the most beautiful gyms in the world, and we manufacture a lot of the equipment that go into those spaces. So we design gyms, home gyms, boutique studios, apartment complexes, corporate studios, schools. We do all of the various different sort of working on many of the different channels, and then we focus on developing a lot of cool and sexy equipment to go in there to motivate and inspire people to work out. That was really the idea. A lot of people say your stuff's super colorful, and we put a lot of effort into design, and we were probably one of the first companies that did a lot of those things, which I'm proud to say. But it's really about looking at people that don't exercise. That was always where I came from, and finding ways to make products look more colorful or more tactile or more engaging, so that I could get somebody like my mum flipping a big tire, which is a great movement for someone like my mum to be doing, but she would be put off if it was like one of these big dirty black CrossFit tires that filthy your hands and scratch you. So it's just taking a lot of those ideas and trying to make it a little bit more accessible to more people.
That's great. And I would agree with you. Do make gyms and fitness studios look very sexy, because the equipment is beautiful and the design is amazing and the colors are amazing and the textures. And so I would agree with that. If you haven't checked that out, go check out Escape Fitness. You'll be pleasantly surprised at how sexy that brand is.
Well, this is something just behind me. This is my wallpaper, and you can kind of see one of the rooftop locations we did in Santa Monica. So I'll give a little bit of a plug of some of the things that we do. But yeah, this is a typical example of you know, we like to make boring spaces look fun and exciting.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So let's backtrack. Let's go back to little Matthew before Escape was born and talk about how that happened. Like today, the company is very large.
Ask my mum about that one. My mum and dad.
I love it. I don't know if we want to go that far back. Yeah, we're not talking about cutting the umbilical cord or anything like that. But you know, the company's big now. You guys are in thousands of fitness facilities. You're pretty large, family-owned, family-run company. You're not like a big corporate conglomerate that's venture-backed or anything like that, but still you're a good sized company that does a lot of really great business. Go back to the origin days, and how did you get into the business? How did it all begin?
I was a young, inspired by Arnold and pumping iron bodybuilder. I sort of fell in love with that when I was about 15, and the movie just sort of captured something in me. I think it was a combination of the Muscle Beach in California and that as a lifestyle. That was definitely a big part of it. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be and live in America. I used to watch all the American sort of what do they call them? Kind of like the American cop shows and all that sort of stuff. Like in England, when I was a kid, every weekend there was a whole load of these different programs: the Dukes of Hazzard, the A-Team, Baywatch, all that kind of stuff. And so for me, I was like, look, that's where I want to be. So there was a little bit of the sort of living in California, which I guess is a little bit why I ended up here. And then the lifestyle of the sort of bodybuilders, Muscle Beach, and that. So that was I suppose the big inspiration for me. And sort of left school without really any qualifications apart from one in woodwork and metalwork, where I created some squat stands that I used in my own home gym and an adjustable bench. And I only did it because I couldn't really afford to buy one. So I thought if I can make it at school out of their equipment, then I've got some free equipment, and it got me a qualification. But it did kind of give me a couple of things. One, it sort of got me to feel as I really enjoyed making things or being involved in making things. And I liked product. That was something that I kind of found I had a passion on in my early days. And then I also really love fitness. Just I kind of went on to be a doorman, and the reason I did that was it was a great place to meet girls and pick up girls and stuff, but and to go out for free. But also it was a great way.
That wasn't your shirtless job, was it?
Well, it was part of that story, certainly. But also the people that used to work in that sort of environment, they were all bodybuilders, and so I'd go to the places where they would have the people that I wanted to hang around with and train with and learn about their diets and their training and be able to get in all the gyms and everything. So it was really outside of my day job. It was always something that I wanted to find a way to get involved in. And so I suppose it started when I was really young, and then many years later, I managed to find a way of starting a business with my dad, making weight plates and dumbbells. So that's
incredible. So you actually started with your dad. Is he your co-founder?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he was.
Okay.
My dad's an engineer, and he'd done that, trained that most of his life, worked for other companies. And when I got older and a bit more sensible, and he was at a time of his life where his children had grown up and he felt as though he could take more risks. We said, look, let's set up a family business. And so he had an idea about manufacturing in Eastern Europe, Poland, which is where he was from. And then I had a sort of a kind of inkling that I wanted to do something in fitness. And we just, a few things came together. I had an idea. I said, look, could you make this? And he found a place in Poland where we could make them. And that was really how we started. There was a lot of things that didn't quite go to plan in all of that, but it was
way. You mean in this perfect world we live in, right? So can we talk about that a little bit? Because a lot of times, we have a lot of health club owners, gym owners, and other type of fitness companies that listen to this show. And there's that honeymoon phase where the excitement is keeping you up at night because you're starting and you're just getting going and it's exciting and you're climbing up the hill. But all of a sudden, things turn out way different than you think they originally were going to turn out. And you're facing adversity and you're questioning, is it worth it? And this is the cycle that every entrepreneur goes through. What are some of the things and the adversities that you had to face and overcome, and what did you learn from that?
I kind of get them most weeks, to be honest. I think ever since I started, there's always something. And I guess the way I read about it, it wasn't my idea, but it made a lot of sense to me. It's like climbing Mount Everest and getting to base camp is an effort in itself. That's not an easy journey there. But when you're at base camp, you've got a slightly different perspective on things than what you did before you got to base camp. And then you have to start climbing up the mountain. And at the different stages, your view of the territory, the challenges that you're going through, the different pressures on yourself continue to change as the environment changes. And so I suppose it for any people that may not be in business but thinking about it, I guess you've got to just get used to that always being uncomfortable and always being in a position where stuff's going wrong that you don't really know how to deal with. But I think that's a good thing, because that does mean that you're growing. If you're in a position where you're not being challenged and you're not being pushed and you don't have to learn new skills and you don't go through those dark days where it's like, I don't have the answer, what am I going to do? Then you are definitely standing still, and that's probably not a good place to be either. Now, I know there are some people deal with that a lot better than others, and they say, look, if you aren't that kind of person, then be a number 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 to someone that does want to do that. So because for me, that's something I enjoy, but there's other bits that I'm terrible at, as is any business person. And so you also need those people that are not adventurous. They want the they want the predictability and they want structure, and because you need those people in the business as well. Otherwise, you know, if you have too many people like me or like an entrepreneur,
Right.
and I've seen that, and I've worked with many companies, it's also a disaster because they're so all over the place. So I think to kind of answer your question, I think you've got to understand, you know, who you are in that space. You know, are you the entrepreneur? Are you the manager? Are you the artist? You know, the creator? And then sort of build those people around you that do those things that you don't, and make sure that whatever position you're doing, you're always constantly progressing, evolving, moving forward.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And I love the fact that you're separating and segmenting different personality types and character traits on, hey, not everybody's cut out for it, and not 100%. If everybody was an entrepreneur, we would have nothing. So that makes perfect sense. And Steve Jobs said, you got to love it because it's hard. You know, there's a lot of hurdles you got to overcome. So that's great. So this is where you started. You're facing some adversity. When did you and how did you start getting a lot of traction for Escape? And when did you like think, oh, okay, we're onto something. Things are really starting to work and take off?
In the early days, it was a part-time thing for my father and myself. So we had our main jobs that we were both doing, and we did this in our spare time in the evenings to get it to a stage where it was generating enough money where we didn't really have a plan about this, but we just wanted to generate money. But I guess when it really started to happen was when the business got to a stage where I could actually almost stop the other business that I was involved in, and that was my grandfather's business. And it was a very small business, and it wasn't making a lot of money, but it was still a business, and it was providing a salary. So we kind of got it to a stage where I could leave that, and then the new, which was Escape, could actually support my salary. So I did that. My mum used to help out part-time, and then my dad continued in the evenings because he was earning a lot more than what I was at the time, and it was a big risk for him to say, well, I'm not going to leave a job and come to this yet until we really know it's going places. So we sort of, there was many little steps, but the first one probably was for me leaving my current job and starting this. Then I don't know the exact timing, but a year or so, then my father had to make that decision. He went part-time, then he left fully and came over, and we wanted to make sure that there was enough opportunity, and it wasn't just going to suddenly go down. It was a stable sales volume that was coming in for him to leave. So I guess in the early days, those were probably like the two big things that happened. But then, you know, as you go on, there's always those sort of little things that come, but also you get these things, these big steps that move you up to the next level. But you also get, after 20 years, you get a number of those that go in the opposite direction, a little bit like the stock market. You know, it kind of goes up and down over that period. Right. So you have to, and the first time it happens, it's terrible. You know, you've obviously never been there before, but it's going to happen. You know, very few businesses are fortunate that for 20 plus years, they just continue to go up that direction. Now, if you drew a straight line, we go there. That's been the trajectory. But in between that, we've had some, you know, real steep drops and then come back up again. And yeah, first time that happens, you're not prepared for it, and it's pretty scary. So you also have to do the best you can to be prepared for that kind of stuff as well. I would say.
How do you get through a time like that? I don't think I've ever met any entrepreneur that has never, if they've been in business for more than at least a year or two, has never gone through what you're talking about. Yes, it's not linear, but you are riding the stock like that, right? Like a stock market climbing. How do you get through something like that? How do you pull yourself up? What's the secret sauce to overcoming those challenges when you feel like you're having to assemble an airplane on the way down? Figure it out.
Well, I'm sure there's many people that have just with the pandemic that have actually been through that recently, and that's probably one of the, in a different way, that was probably a very tough one, because all of our customers pretty much closed down overnight, and we were getting letters from a lot of people we work with to say, look, we can't pay you because we're closed. So that was a bit of a scary thing. But we've also been through recessions as well, that have happened through the years. So they all kind of affect you a little bit differently. But yeah, I don't think there's any rule book. Well, there certainly wasn't for the pandemic. And
Right.
so really I think one of the things that I did, and I guess I've not analyzed it, but me personally, in terms of what do I do, because we're all, we all have to go through this as ourselves as well as the people that we work with. But the thing that I focused on initially was my own sort of health, mental and physical health, because whoever you're around, you particularly in my position and other people in our business, is that you really need to be providing a level of sort of stability and confidence, and that it's going to be okay. And because if you're not in that position, then being able to motivate, lead, and inspire anyone else is virtually impossible. So there was definitely quite a bit of time that I was spent with myself, just making sure I could get my head in the right place to be able to do that as a leader, which I guess is what I am within my own organization. So health and fitness was number one, because I've always, throughout my life, even when I was a kid, whether it was like breaking up in relationships and having business issues and all kinds of stuff like that, the thing that always got me together was going to the gym. Whenever I went to the gym, although I didn't really feel like going to the gym, I managed to sort of force myself to get in the door and just pick up some weights or start running. And then very, very quickly, my mind would shift. And then I always used to come out, and I always just say, like, I just feel so much better coming out than what I did going in. So that that's a habit that I found when I was a teenager. And it stuck with me today, to this day. So just getting that fitness part right is number one. Making sure that my diet is pretty decent is number two. And a lot of people, as we all know, that stuck at home through the pandemic, a lot of people put on a huge amount of weight, eating a load of shit food. Bad food that you shouldn't be eating. Drinking a lot, almost just as a bit of a sort of like
something to numb the pain, right?
just to sort of try and deal with it. So getting that in place and making sure that fitted in with, certainly during the lockdown, working from home as well, where you're not out meeting people and all those things. So mentally, physically, from a nutrition perspective, and then also from the recovery, making sure that I'm not going to catch any of this stuff that's out there. So I wanted to make sure I'm getting some good rest and sleep, and not doing anything that's going to be detrimental to that. And then for me, I just felt I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know whether we was even going to be able to stay in the US, because part of my condition of being here is that our business is being successful. So there were so many uncertainties in my life at that time. But I thought, if I'm in a good place, then whatever is thrown at me, I'm going to be in a good place to deal with it. And that was really my philosophy. And then obviously it's from a business perspective, it's doing work, getting the team together, having a look at what you can control, what you can't control, and just really getting all hands on deck and just surviving. And then once you've sort of got through that, then sort of figuring out how you're going to build back up again. But I think to really answer your question, you've got to get yourself first in that right place for your family. If you've got children, for the people who work around you, you've got to be putting yourself and your health, that rhymes, yourself and your health first. And then you can do whatever you want. But it's easy to do it the other way around and say, I'm at the moment, I'm too busy, I've got too much to do to focus on my health. I'll do that later. And I think that's a big mistake that people make.
That's such a great observation. Put yourself and your health as a priority. And on paper, it may look backwards or selfish, But if you don't do that, you can actually make things worse and become more destructive, especially as a leader with the people around you. Because if you're down, you're going to pull everybody down with you. But if they're down, they need somebody to pull them up. And if you're not strong enough and you're not in a position to do that, you need to get yourself right first. So that is really, really great advice. And I could not, Matthew, I couldn't agree with you more that there's times where you're going to the gym and you're going to walk in and you're tired, you're maybe a little hungry, don't feel like being there, and you leave there like, man, I'm surprised I had the best workout and I'm so glad I did it. And the dopamine's kicking and you leave there feeling like a completely different person. Like your brain lights up, your circulation's going, you feel good, you're smiling, and it's just like, it's amazing. So don't underestimate the power of just moving and getting in the gym, right? And making that work for you. So that's really good advice. That's something a lot of people overlook. So where is the company now that we're, all the way past, and let's talk about the podcast here in a little bit too. Where are you guys at now? Are things back to going good? And I know that you guys have done some really big things. How are things for you?
I think for anyone in business at the moment, with the odd exception, it's still, we're certainly not out of the woods yet. This year is going to be another challenging year. We've got the supply chain itself, the rising costs, the things are still not totally back to normal. People are not back to pre-pandemic patterns in a lot of areas, although in some cases they are, but things are definitely modified. And
right.
I've been out, I've traveled, I've stayed in hotels, and I've been on airplanes, and I've got to see a little bit about what's going on. And I think we've still got a long way to go. And my guess is it's going to be well into next year. I would have thought before things are back to normal. It's great to see places like the UK. I saw Denmark yesterday, and some of the places in Southern Europe where they've declared that the pandemic there is over, and that's good. And I think that's really now the first step. It's not happening in America yet, unfortunately, but I think that's got to happen. People have got to get used to it. Now we're going to move on, but we've got to get used to this. And then obviously it becomes this rebuilding phase for a lot of people. We just hiring, recruiting people alone, that's a big challenge. That is creating issues in itself. We import a lot of stuff from Asia. That's still in a total mess, and that, certainly from what I'm seeing, it's going to be right until the end of the year before those issues resolve themselves at the very soonest. And so as an organization, we're moving. We're doing things differently. We're manufacturing a lot of products now in our UK facility, a lot more than what we were doing. We're diversifying as much as we can from Asia. I think there's going to be challenges for quite a long time. And I think it's exposed a lot of the challenges that we've all had, where we've had so much reliance on just in time and getting stuff from places like China, which isn't, I'm not saying, I've not got anything against China. I've got some great friends and partners that we invest with over there. But I do think that people in business, we've got to look at things differently. We should be manufacturing and producing a lot more things on our sort of home soil. All of that's gone away because people want the quick and easy and the cheap, and that is a problem. So I think costs are going to rise, and I think we need to start supporting small businesses and people that are doing a lot more stuff closer to home. There's a big talk about the green agenda and what's going on there. Well, bringing thousands and thousands of big ships and everything that goes into that across the world is also not good. So just even if you're concerned about the environment, then producing things in more of a sustainable way locally, where you're not burning fossil fuels to get them to you, is something that we should also think about. So I think the pandemic's been great because it's brought a lot of these things to the surface that ordinarily wouldn't have happened. It's questioned travel. I used to be on a plane every month. I'd be traveling to Europe or to Asia. And many people were exactly the same as me. That was just normal. If you wanted a meeting, you jump on a plane and you go and fly there. And when you think of what that does to you and maybe what that does to the environment and all the costs, it's like there's probably better ways to do it. You know, even having this experience,
Right.
the technology through things like Zoom and conference calls and that, it has changed. Most of the time now, it's you're almost like a bit weird if you have a call and you're not looking at someone. You know,
That did change quite a bit.
Yeah, in some cases, I'm like, look, I don't actually want to look at you because you've just got out of bed and you're not even dressed yourself. So I'm not particularly interested in looking at you, but it's almost like the thing to do. Whereas a couple of years ago, unless you were sort of like the in crowd, or into this stuff, those people would do the FaceTime stuff, but everyone else didn't. But now that's shifted. So I think in short, and I have gone around the houses, but I think there's some real painful but important changes that probably would have never have happened if it hadn't have been for the pandemic. And I think what we've got to do is look at that stuff that does make sense now, even things like work-life balance, which I think a lot of people have realized that they want a little bit more of that, and try and sort of rebuild. I hate this saying, but it's, like this build back better, but in some ways it does make sense. It's like, look, let's sort of build things back in a more sensible way for ourselves individually, for our businesses, for the environment. Let's consider that a little bit more than probably what we would have had to.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree that with the whole pandemic, it flushed out a lot of weak businesses, unfortunately, but the ones that had sustaining power learned so much that they'll never, ever, ever do business the same again. And it's going to be a more, lack of a better word, secure, more robust, more foundational based business that's going to be stronger moving into the future. And then I'm in agreement with you. We've got about 1.5 to 2 years before we see, especially the fitness industry, really climb out. I talk to fitness owners, gym owners almost daily, and kind of know where they're at financially and how things are going. And so I would agree with you. We're on the climb, but it's a slow climb and it's going to take a while to get out. But it's the most resilient industry, one of the most resilient industries, and it will build back.
And let me just jump in on that, because it's not all doom and gloom. I think for anyone that is in the fitness space, it is really important to also remember that what we do as a large industry that continues to grow and evolves into something different than I suppose what most of us think. But your health and wellness has never been more important to people, and the pandemic has made people realize that. We had an interview yesterday with a lady from CES, and she was talking about how this sort of the medical industry and the wellness industry and how things are really starting to overlap. If you look at what's happening in the wearable space now, the technology in terms of understanding what's going on with you and then how to resolve that through what you eat, how you work out, how you move, is really starting to come together. So I think, although there's a lot of businesses that I wouldn't, or industries that I wouldn't want to be in, I think fitness and wellness, however you define it, is probably one of the best places that you can be in. There's a huge amount of growth. There's a huge amount of opportunity. There's a huge amount of people that are coming into that area that hadn't even considered it before as a result of the pandemic. And I think the skill really for business owners and entrepreneurs, leaders, investors, etc., is to try and sort of figure out how we can evolve what we're doing beyond, I suppose, how we used to define ourselves, and be part of this new rapidly expanding arena where I think, there's more than enough to go around for everybody to do extremely well.
I love it. I think that's fantastic. And that's a beautiful segue, because in your podcast, you talked to me earlier, even before the show, that a rising tide raises all ships. And you're big on helping the industry. You're big on lifting the industry up and just really helping it grow overall. And you're playing a huge role in that, leading the way. The show is incredible. So again, I'm going to plug your show, the Escape Your Limits podcast. You got to listen to it. You've had a lot of a really incredible guest. And what I want to do is just kind of pick your brain to see if there's anything over the years of interviewing all these people, of lessons learned, or people in particular, or certain companies that really stood out to you, something that you've learned along the way that really just made an impact on you. And I would love to hear something along those lines with the show, because there's got to be some really great golden nuggets of knowledge there.
Yeah, there certainly has been. Like everybody I speak to, I learn something from, number one, and you can't help but have their inspiration, their stories rub off on you. But it's difficult to sort of measure that, how you become a slightly different person as a result of the people that you meet and the stories that you get to hear about. But there's definitely a part of that, but it's probably something that I don't notice myself, but other people notice. And yeah, it's almost like a byproduct. And a lot of the guests that I get are quite selfishly people that I'm also interested in, whether it's if there's a book I've seen or a particular subject that I really want to go into, then I go into it as a novice, trying to figure out how that happened, how that person achieved that, or why they wrote that book, and how I can apply that into what I'm doing. So you kind of get these learnings as you go along, which is great. But the thing that I suppose really amazes me out of it is I've created a lot of relationships. And I think as business owners, and I say this to our sales team, in fact, I said it this week, we had a sales training, is you really got to force yourself to go out there and get different views and different perspectives from different people. Because if you don't, you just become sort of blinkered. Well, this is the industry that I'm in. This is the trade show that I go to. And what happens when you go to these industry shows? Well, you see your mates, you see people that you didn't see since the last show, and you're sharing the same stories, and you're meeting the same people in the bar, and you're all doing the same things or variations of the same things. And it becomes this sort of incestuous sort of, and I'm not saying it's bad, because I love it, and there's a place for that. But what we've also got to do is force ourselves to go, and why don't we go to something like, let's go to a fitness show. But I've always done this in my career, is I'll go into a sort of like a trade show for the printing industry or for the fashion industry, or I always go to these different shows that got nothing to do with what we're involved in. But they inspire me. I used to go to shows in the extreme sports and see things like snowboarding, skateboarding, surfing, and see what they were doing. And I used to get a lot of ideas in my early days from things like that. So I think the first thing is it's really important to kind of not be so stuck in the industry that we're in, and force yourself to go out and make new connections, meet new people, and have a strategy to do that. Don't just sort of say, oh, I've met a few people this month. Actually say, look, this month I'm going to meet 5 people in 5 areas that got nothing to do with what I'm doing, and I'm going to ask some different questions. That's the first thing. Or you can listen to our podcast where I do things like that as well. And then I think the second, probably more important thing than doing that is I realize it's not about knowledge, because I've certainly had hundreds of hours worth of knowledge where I've been able to ask all the burning questions from people that I wouldn't normally be able to get an hour with. And some of the people I've met actually charge a ridiculous amount of money just for a 1-hour consultation. And yet I've spoke to them and I've asked them anything. So it's not necessarily about the knowledge, but the thing that I think we all miss sometimes, even when we listen to podcasts or read books or go to seminars, is it's the application and the action that you're going to take on that. And after about 6 months in, I started to create this area on my iPhone in my notes where I would actually now say, look, I'm going to put down 2 or 3 lessons that I got from that person. And then I'm going to sort of make another note where I'm going to say, look, what action am I going to take? How can I build that into a habit in my life? Or how can I build that into something I'm going to do, or a step I'm going to take, or whatever? But I'm going to create from all of those little things, I'm going to create specific actions that I'm going to continue to move forward. And I think if in general, we all do that. We all spend time listening to stuff and reading books and whatever. But it's like, what are you doing with all that? Because it's not, I realized it's not knowledge that separates the people that are successful from everyone else. It's what and as corny as it sounds, it's really what you do about that knowledge, because you can have all the ideas in your head, you can have all the creativity, you can have that, but you've got to actually put it to work at some point. And it's the ones that execute generally, even as though they might not be as brilliant as some professor, they're the ones that actually go and turn it into a great business success, because they get up and make it happen.
Home run out of the park, right there, gone. That's the quote of the day. It's not what you know, it's what you do with what you know, right? And I'm already convicted. So after this today, I will be writing down my 3 things that I learned, which one of them is you reminded me of the importance of cross-pollinating with people in other industries and that think differently and do things very differently than we do in our industry. And, you forget about those things. You get tunnel vision, like you said, you get tunnel vision and you get house blind, and you forget, there's a great big world out there with a lot of other opportunities and options to expand and learn from that. And I think isn't that how the Model T was created or manufacturing, how they made the car?
Yeah. And it doesn't, I don't know about the Model T, but it doesn't also have to be from the gurus either. I think that's the other thing that, as I said, we talked about this in our sales training the other day. A lot of times it's the people that on the grass, the people that, in the grassroots who are really the ones that know what's going on. They're the ones on the front line. They're the ones that have the insights about, well, yeah, of course, everyone says that that's a problem, or everyone says that they don't enjoy that part of the experience. And so sometimes the simplest thing is like, well, look, if we could just solve that, all of these people are going to start coming back to us, or all of these people are going to buy that product, or whatever. So, it's not always, you shouldn't always look up to the gurus and think they know what they're doing. Because in a lot of cases, as I say to my team, look, we're sort of in meetings in our own little world. You guys are the really real ones that know what's going on, and we need to understand what is really happening, and that's why it's important to sort of get out there and not sit in an ivory tower with the door closed and lose connection with who your real customers are. So I'm also a big fan of just getting out, and I know it's been difficult through the pandemic, but I do feel that although Zoom and all that stuff is great, and I did talk about earlier about not going on planes, I do think that we've got to find some time, maybe not quite as frequently, but we still shouldn't lose touch that business is people to people, and getting out and having those experiences, and is still a really important thing to do.
Right on. So let's wrap up with this question. Let's pretend you're in your twilight years. Let's pretend it's down the road, long time from now. If there was only one thing that you could accomplish by that time and say that you did it, what would that one thing be and why?
Yeah, that's an interesting and very tough question, really. One that probably needs some serious thought. But if as I've not really got the luxury of being able to give it a lot of thought, although I will write it down. That will be my thing I'm going to learn from this podcast, to sort of get clarity on that question. But I think, and it's funny actually, you should say this, that I got a friend of mine, Sven. He sends these kind of interesting emails out every I don't know if he'll be listening, but every week, and he put the Steve Jobs final word, or one of his final words down, and I got an email, and it was quite interesting because he was basically I'll try and find it as we talk, but I don't know if I can, but he was basically saying, Steve Jobs' last words, he was kind of saying that he was 56 when he passed away, which is, I'm 51, so not that much further, his twilight years weren't. And as he said, he really reached the pinnacle of success. People still talk about him today. He was responsible, although dark sides to him, he was responsible for changing the course of history. This iPhone and what's been built upon it, and what we can now do as a result of this, and what his influence is in, or his involvement in making that happen, has has really changed the course of the world. And, you know, I guess that's a nice thing to sort of leave behind. But, you know, he also talks about the basic things. You know, he said, you know, all the money and all the luxuries. He said, at the end of the day, if you're on a plane and someone's at the front in first class and you're at the back, you're going down in the same plane together. You know, it doesn't matter regardless. So it was interesting to read that, and it kind of got me thinking a lot about it. But I think really it's probably one, I don't want to forget about what's important in life, and that for me, that's my friends, my family, and the impact I can have in their life, because it's very easy that, and certainly when in my younger days, it was all about the business and being successful and achieving your goals, and I sacrificed a lot of things for that I can never get back, and no, as he said, no amount of money, fame, or success can give you those things. Health, as an example. Yeah. So I think I want to make sure that I don't forget, and I don't forget what's important to me in my life. And then I think secondly, you know, in terms of what we're doing as an organization, I'd like to be able to leave something behind that continues beyond me, that has a positive impact in people's lives, particularly in health and wellness, and, you know, mental, physical health and wellness. And so if I can, my time here, if I can create something or start something or build something that will continue to have impact in people's lives way beyond me, so that, you know, my spirit can live on even if I'm not here, then I think that's probably you know, similar to sort of what Steve Jobs was able to do. You know, hopefully that, you know, that's something, a sign of a complete life, I guess. But it's a tough question.
It is. Now you're going to be thinking about that one
just out of interest. What is yours?
Mine is my top one would be that the people that I knew, the people that I had relationships with, would be better off for knowing me when I leave. So I would have enough of an impact because I love people, I care about people. I have enough of an impact in their lives that their lives were impacted in a positive way. So that way, when I'm gone, it would be a real miss if they never knew me.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, absolutely. So, well, listen, this has been amazing. I always enjoy spending time with you. It was great to see you at Ursha. It's fantastic to spend time with you over Zoom. I hope this is not our last meeting this year. I hope to reconnect again, and just to say hey, or I'll Uber you a drink or something over there in California, and we can say cheers over Zoom or whatever. But if people want to connect with you or the podcast or the company, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, if LinkedIn is a good place. I do a bunch of business stuff on there, and it's just my name, Matthew Januszek, which you can see at the bottom there. Instagram, I do sort of a little bit less formal stuff on there, so you can check me out there. If you're interested in anything we do and designing spaces like I've got behind me, then you can go to the Escape Fitness website and just mention you know me. Yep. and yeah, you know, and then we've got our podcast. We do a ton of stuff on the Escape Fitness YouTube channel. We have some great everything from workout advice and nutrition and sleep and exercises and gym designs, all that kind of stuff that I've been talking about. There's some cool stuff to watch there, and I'd, you know, recommend you check that out. And you know, hopefully if anyone's listening, and I'm going to be at Ursa this year, and maybe FIBO on any of the shows, so, you know, come up, and love to have a chat with anyone that's been listening. And you know, it'd be great with you as well, Nick, if we get a chance to hopefully bump into each other again some point this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you watching, Matthew is being very humble right now. You got to go see his podcast. If you add it all up, there's millions of views on his channel. Check out the YouTube channel, some fantastic interviews, great guests. And Matthew is an amazing host. He has some really, really intriguing questions. So you definitely need to go check that out. Check out his YouTube channel for sure. So, all right. So thank you. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. So like, share, and subscribe to the next level of your success. And again, we can't wait to see you next time. Talk to you soon.